Hello students, welcome back to today's biology class. In today's class, let us discuss about pregnancy and embryonic development. So in the previous class, we have seen that how an embryo is formed. Now what happens to this embryo after the formation of zygote? The zygote starts dividing. Now let's see what happens to this embryo. How an embryo is transformed into a fetus and finally a baby. So in today's class, let us discuss about this. So now in the last class, we have seen that after the formation of the blastocyst gets embedded in the uterine wall, that is the endometrial lining, and this process is called as implantation. Now after that, so when the outermost layer of the blastocyst called as a trophoblast gets embedded, what happens is from the trophoblast, finger-like projections called as the chorionic villi appear on the trophoblast, and this gets interdigited with the uterine tissue to form a structural and functional unit between the developing embryo and the maternal body, which we call as the placenta. Okay, so once again, let us recollect what is implantation. So the blastocyst, attachment of the blastocyst to the endometrial lining of the uterus is called as implantation. Right now, so when the blastocyst gets attached to the endometrial lining, what are the changes that take place? Changes takes place both in the developing embryo as well as the endometrial lining, that is the maternal tissue, which is the endometrial lining, and the trophoblast layer. Both these layers, there will be some changes. Now what happens from the trophoblast layer? From the trophoblast layer, finger-like projections appear, and these finger-like projections are called as chorionic villi. And the uterine tissue, that is the endometrial lining, also the cells of the endometrial lining also starts dividing rapidly and they cover the trophoblast, and during this what happens is the finger-like projections called as a chorionic villi and the uterine cells, tissue cells, get interdigited. They just form cells like this, they form interdigitation and form a new membrane, which is a connection between the developing embryo and the maternal tissue, and this membrane is called as the placenta. So here you can see, so this is the chorionic villi which is formed from the trophoblast layer. Here you can see, these are the chorionic villi. Okay, these are the chorionic villi, and this is towards the inside of the uterus. Okay, so the maternal tissue and the chorionic villi, they get interdigited to form a structural and functional unit between the developing embryo and the maternal body, which is called as placenta. So in other words, we can say placenta is the organic connection between the mother and the fetus. So here you can see, this is the placental villi, that is a chorionic villi and the uterine tissue joining together. Everywhere you can see, this is that. Okay, fine. Now let's discuss about the functions of placenta. What are the functions of placenta? So we have seen that placenta is a connection between the developing embryo and the maternal tissue. The placenta acts, it has some function to do. It acts as the lungs of the baby, we can say. Why? Because it facilitates the supply of oxygen. Placenta facilitates a supply of oxygen. That is how it helps in it acts as a lungs. It also helps in the removal of carbon dioxide. Now, it also supplies nutrients to the embryo. For the developing embryo, whatever is required, the nutrients which are required for the developing embryo is also supplied by the placenta. So one function is the placenta facilitate the supply of oxygen as well as the nutrients. Second one, it also helps in the removal of carbon dioxide, as well as the excretory materials, as well as the waste materials. Waste materials in the sense of metabolic waste which are produced within the fetus. Excretory waste which are produced within the fetus will be removed by the placenta. So it has a function of supplying the oxygen and the nutrients, and also it helps in the removal of carbon dioxide and other excretory waste materials. Now, the third important function is it acts as an endocrine tissue. Endocrine glands, we have studied. What are endocrine glands? They secrete certain hormones. So it acts as an endocrine tissue and secretes certain hormones. The hormones secreted by the placenta are very, very important. And that is human chorionic gonadotrophin, human placental lactogen, estrogen, and progesterone or progestogen. So these are the 4 hormones which are secreted by the placenta. So the placenta acts as an endocrine tissue and secretes certain hormones. Which are the hormones secreted? One is human chorionic gonadotrophin. The short form is HCG. H you have to write small letter, C and G capital letter. Second one, human placental lactogen, HPL. And third one, estrogen. Fourth one, progestogen. Actually, it is progesterone itself. Progesterone secreted by the corpus luteum. So we have seen that after, if fertilization takes place, the corpus luteum remains as it is. What is corpus luteum? The ruptured Graafian follicle which is present in the ovary. So the corpus luteum secretes progesterone. Progestogen is a synthetic, it's a form of progesterone. Okay, so these are the 4 hormones secreted by placenta. Hope you got it. Right, very important from examination point of view. You may get a question, name the placental hormones. These are the 4 placental hormones which are mentioned in your, Ncert textbook. These are the main ones. That is human chorionic gonadotrophin, human placental lactogen, estrogen, and progestogen or progesterone. Then the placenta, it is connected to the embryo. So what I said, placenta is a connection between the mother and the fetus. Okay, now the placenta is connected. So it's a membrane which is found between the mother and the fetus. Now this placenta is connected to the fetus, growing fetus. Placenta is connected to the fetus by means of a cord which is called as the umbilical cord. What's it called as? Umbilical cord. This umbilical cord helps in transport of substances to and from the embryo. So what is the difference between placenta and umbilical cord? Placenta is a connection between fetus and the maternal body, right? That is the trophoblast layer and the endometrial lining. And umbilical cord is a connection between the fetus and the placenta. Placenta is a membrane. This umbilical cord is a cord. Okay, so that is all about the functions of placenta. Hope it's clear. So the functions of placenta, we can say in short, placenta acts as the lungs of the baby. Why? Because it helps in the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. It acts as the alimentary canal of the baby. How? It supplies nutrients to the embryo. Then it acts as the kidneys of the baby. How? It helps in the removal of excretory waste materials. So placenta has a major function to do. It helps in facilitates the supply of oxygen and nutrients. It helps in the removal of carbon dioxide and excretory or the waste materials. Then it acts as an endocrine tissue. How? By producing certain hormones. Which are the hormones? Human chorionic gonadotrophin, human placental lactogen, estrogen, and progesterone. Then it is also connected to the embryo by means of a cord which is called as the umbilical cord. Hope it's clear? Right. Now let us study about the hormones which are found in a female during the time of pregnancy. That is, during the time of delivery, that is towards the later stages of pregnancy, that is towards the 9th month and all, we will find that a hormone will be secreted by the ovary, and that hormone is called as the relaxin. So relaxin is a hormone secreted by the ovary during the later phase of pregnancy. You may get this as a question. Name the hormone which is secreted at later phase of pregnancy. Now, in addition to that, HCG, HPL and relaxin. HCG means human chorionic gonadotrophin, HPL is human placental lactogen, and relaxin. These are the 3 hormones which are produced only during pregnancy. Very important. Estrogen and progesterone are produced even every month during the time of ovulation. Right, so we have seen that during menstrual cycle there are certain hormones. So progesterone is secreted by corpus luteum and the estrogen is secreted by the follicular cells. So those 2 are found in the female body anytime, not only during pregnancy, but during the time of pregnancy the only hormones which are found only during pregnancy. Only during pregnancy, the hormones which are found are HCG, HPL and Relaxin. These names also you have to remember. Now, during pregnancy, what happens is lot of changes takes place within the mother, within the fetus and all that. So in order to maintain that, the level of the hormones increases. Now the levels of hormones like estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, prolactin, thyroxine. So all these hormones, the level of all these hormones will be increased for supporting fetal growth, maintenance of pregnancy and other metabolic changes in the mother. So in addition to the hormones like relaxin, HCG and HPL which are produced only during the time of pregnancy, in addition to that, the levels of other hormones like estrogen, progesterone, prolactin. Estrogen and progesterone, I already told you, estrogen is secreted by follicular cells, progesterone is secreted by the corpus luteum. Then prolactin, it is secreted by the pituitary gland. Thyroxine, secreted by the thyroid gland. So the levels of all these hormones also will be high. Why? It is to increase to support the fetal growth, to maintain pregnancy and also to help in the other metabolic changes which take place in the mother. Hope it's clear? So that is all about hormones. Now, what happens to the inner cell mass? So after implantation, we have seen that from the trophoblast, finger-like projections arise called as chorionic villi, and that add to the formation of placenta. Now, what happens to the inner cell mass? The division in the inner cell mass continues. The blastocele gets reduced and more cells will be formed, and these cells starts differentiating into different layers, and these layers which are formed by the division and differentiation of the inner cell mass, these layers are called as the germ layers. There are three different germ layers. The outermost layer is called as the ectoderm, the middle layer is called as a mesoderm, and the inner layer is called as endoderm. So which are the three germ layers? Ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. This we have already studied in first year. Hope you remember that. Okay. Now these three germ layers give rise to various organs and tissues. So in the baby, the different organs and the organ systems are all developed from these three different layers. Which three layers? Endoderm, ectoderm and mesoderm. Hope you got it. Now, the inner cell mass, it has certain specialized cells, certain cells which are called as the stem cells. And these stem cells, they have the ability to give rise to all the tissues and organs. Okay, and that is called as totipotency. Totipotency is a ability of certain cells to grow into whole organism. So there are certain cells in the inner cell mass which are called as the stem cells. And what is the function of these stem cells? They have the ability to develop into all tissues and organs. Now let's see the embryonic development, that is the pregnancy, period of pregnancy, or what we call as gestation. Hope you remember. So coming back to the events of reproduction, first one, gametogenesis, insemination, fertilization, implantation, then it is gestation. Gestation means the period from the time the zygote is formed, the period of conception till the time of delivery. That is called as gestation period. In human beings, gestation period is about 9 months. Okay, 9 months, about 9 months. Okay, and what happens during each of these 9 months? Let's see. The first month, towards the end of the first month after the fusion of the zygote, what happens is the embryo's heart will be formed. So the first organ to be formed in a baby is the heart of the baby. So after, by the end of the first month, we can feel or we can hear the heartbeat of the baby. The baby's heart starts beating. Then, end of the second month, what happened? The fetus develops the limbs and the digits. The small hands and fingers starts developing. Then, by the end of the third month, what we call as a trimester, these 9 months can be divided into three semesters. That is, three different trimesters. That is, first trimester, that is 3 months. By the end of the first 3 months, almost all the organ systems will be developed, and even the genital organs will be developed. So the sex of the baby can be found out only by the end of the third month. Hope it's clear. So the first month, what happens? The baby's heart will be formed. It starts beating. By the end of the second month, what happens? The limbs and the digits will be formed. By the end of the third month, or the first when the first trimester is completed, most of the organ systems will be formed, and it is now we can see the external, even the external genital organs of the baby will be developed. Now, by the end of the fifth month, or by 4.5 months when it is completed, the mother can feel the movement of the baby within the womb. Okay, so the first movements begin during the 4.5 months. The fourth month is completed, and when the baby enters into the fifth month, then even hairs on the head also start developing during the fifth month. Okay, now by the end of the sixth month, that is when the baby completes the second trimester, what happens is one of the major feature of human beings, that is the body will be covered with hairs, presence of hairs over the body. So body will be covered with fine hairs, eyelids separate, the eyelids start separating, the eyelashes also will be formed. Eyelashes means these will be formed. Okay, so these are the major changes. You have to remember all these changes, because you may get what are the major changes taking place during embryonic development. Then you have to write month by month. Okay, so first month, what happens? The baby's heart will be formed. By the end of the second month, what happens? Limbs and digits will be formed. By the end of the third month, what happens? The major organ systems will be formed. Then by the end of fifth month, the first movement of the baby appears, and also the fine hairs appear on the head. Then by the end of the sixth month, the body will be covered with fine hairs, the eyelids separate, eyelashes also will be formed. Now, the next months, okay, by the end of the ninth month, the fetus will be fully developed and the baby will be ready for delivery. Hope it's clear. So these are the embryonic changes which take place during these 9 months. Very, very important from examination point of view. They can ask this question as a 5-mark question. Explain the process which take place during embryonic development. Hope it's clear. Right. Now let's discuss about parturition. What is parturition? That is the last event in the process of reproduction, right? So gametogenesis, insemination, fertilization, implantation, then after implantation it is gestation, and now parturition. You know what is parturition? Parturition is nothing but the process of delivery of the fetus. That is, when the baby fetus is fully formed inside the mother's womb, that is by the end of the 9th month, the baby will be ready to be expelled out of the uterus. And this process of delivery of the fetus due to vigorous contractions of the uterus is called parturition. Note the word parturition, or in simple terms we can define the process of delivery of the baby is called parturition. How does this take place? When it is time for the baby to come out, certain changes takes place within the mother's body as well as the fetus body. Now this process of parturition is a complex mechanism which involves two major systems, that is the nervous system as well as the endocrine system. That is why it is called as neuroendocrine system. Nervous system and endocrine system. Now, when the baby is fully developed, the fully developed fetus starts sending certain signals. Right? What it does, it starts sending certain signals, and this signals induces the placenta. Okay, so signals begin from the developed fetus as well as the placenta. And these signals induce mild contractions in the uterus. That is the middle layer of the uterus, which is made up of muscles, which is called as a myometrium. The muscles of the uterus start getting contractions. Okay, and this signals which are sent by the fully developed fetus and the placenta, which induces mild uterine contractions. This is called as fetal ejection reflex. The reflex for the ejection of the fetus. That's the meaning of fetal ejection reflex. Hope you got it. So what is fetal ejection reflex? The signals for parturition originate from the fully developed embryo or the fully developed fetus and the placenta, which induces mild uterine contractions, which is called as a fetal ejection reflex. Now, this fetal ejection reflex stimulates a pituitary gland of the mother to secrete the hormone called as oxytocin. So signals are sent by the developing fetus, fully developed fetus and the placenta, and this induces the stimulates a pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland starts secreting the hormone called as oxytocin. Okay, and this oxytocin, secretion of oxytocin, it acts on the uterine muscles so that stronger the contractions will be stronger and stronger. Not only that, more and more oxytocin will be secreted. So contractions of the uterus will be more, and at the same time more and more secretion of oxytocin will be there. So oxytocin, the function of oxytocin is secreted by the maternal pituitary, mother's pituitary gland. And this oxytocin, what is its function? It acts on the uterine muscle and causes stronger uterine contractions, which in turn stimulates further secretion of oxytocin, leading to expulsion of the baby. So enough secretion of oxytocin is required for the expulsion of the baby through the birth canal. We have studied about, when we studied about female reproductive system, birth canal. Birth canal is the cervical canal along with the vagina. So the baby comes out through the cervical canal by the stronger contractions of the uterine muscles and more and more secretion of oxytocin. So secretion, enough adequate secretion of oxytocin is very essential for the process of parturition or delivery of baby. Sometimes what happens is the mother's pituitary gland fails to secrete adequate amount of oxytocin. So when there is strong uterine contractions, the mother develops a kind of pain which we call as a labor pain. Okay, so the mother, when it is time for the delivery, the mother develops a kind of pain which is called as labor pain. This labor pain is because of the strong uterine contractions, which is because of the secretion of oxytocin. So all are related. Now if there is no adequate secretion of oxytocin, if the secretion of oxytocin is not adequate, then what happens is there will not be proper contractions. Under such circumstances, the doctors first administer an injection that is nothing but oxytocin injection to induce these contractions. Sometimes that also will not be able, that also will not be sufficient for proper contractions, and hence at that stage the doctor has to go for a open surgery or C-section, cesarean section. The baby has to be taken out by an operation. So that is the role of oxytocin. So here you may get a question, what is parturition? You may get a question, what is fetal ejection reflex? You may get a question, what are the functions of oxytocin? Hope it's clear. All right. Now, so after the delivery of the baby will be expelled out. Along with that, the placenta also will be expelled out. Okay, so that is all about the process of parturition. Hope it's clear. Right. Now, after the delivery of the baby, now the next step is what? Taking care of the baby. How the mother takes care of the baby? Mother feeds the baby. How? From the milk secreted by the mammary glands. This is what is called as lactation. So the mammary glands, which is a unique quality found in mammals. So the mammary gland, it undergo differentiation. We have studied about the structure of the mammary gland. Okay, so this mammary gland undergo differentiation during the time of pregnancy. During these 9 months, the mammary glands also will be getting ready for the secretion of the milk. Okay, and the moment the delivery takes place, what happens is the mammary gland will be ready to secrete the milk. It starts producing milk towards the end of pregnancy, and this is called lactation. Now, the milk which is produced during the initial days of lactation will be slightly yellowish in color, and it will be little thick also. And this yellowish colored milk which is produced during initial stages of lactation is called as colostrum. We have already studied this when we studied. So the colostrum is the initial milk which is produced during the initial days of lactation, and this colostrum contains plenty of antibodies which help the baby to fight against the disease causing organisms, and the antibody which is found in colostrum are of the type IgA, immunoglobulins A. These are the antibodies which are found in the colostrum. Hope it's clear. Yes or no? Okay, so that is all about lactation. Okay, so what is lactation? The mammary glands undergo differentiation during pregnancy and starts producing milk towards the end of pregnancy. This is called as lactation. And the milk produced during the initial stages of lactation is called as colostrum. It is rich in antibodies, especially IgA antibodies, and that is one of the reason why it is always advised to feed the baby right from the beginning. As soon as the baby is born, the first milk, the colostrum, the baby should get the colostrum so that the baby can overcome the disease causing organisms. It can develops immunity, because the baby's body cannot produce antibodies at that time, so the baby receives the antibodies, ready-made antibodies from the mother. Okay, that is why breastfeeding is considered to be very, very important. Hope it's clear. So today we have discussed about pregnancy and embryonic development. So with this, we have completed